The video explores the lives and social status of disabled individuals in medieval society, emphasizing how they were perceived, treated, and cared for during the Middle Ages. Unlike modern terminology, medieval society did not have an encompassing word like disabled, instead categorizing people by specific impairments, such as the blind, lame, deaf, lepers, fools, and lunatics. Disabled people mostly stayed within their communities, cared for by family or neighbors, though some faced exclusion or cruelty. Medieval Christianity deeply influenced societal attitudes, often linking disability with sin and moral failing, which justified limited empathy and charity. The Church prioritized spiritual health over physical well-being, viewing disability as a consequence of sin. Despite harsh attitudes, institutions such as hospitals and hospices began to emerge, often founded by wealthy individuals or religious orders, especially from the 12th century onwards. These institutions provided care for various impairments, including leprosy, blindness, and physical disabilities. However, some disabled people could leverage their condition for survival, as illustrated by a blind beggar who preferred his blindness for the compassion it elicited. Over time, specialized hospitals increased in number, often linked to religious institutions, providing structured care but also reinforcing social segregation. The video concludes by highlighting the complex and often contradictory medieval attitudes toward disability, ranging from cruelty and suspicion to charity and care. Saint Francis of Assisi marked a turning point with his emphasis on compassion for the sick and poor, inspiring monks and nuns to offer shelter and care as a Christian duty. Lepers, in particular, were often housed in separate leprosaria, which were sometimes met with suspicion and persecution, especially during times of crisis like the Black Death. Public humiliation of disabled individuals, such as blind men being mocked in spectacles, was common, reflecting prevailing social prejudices. This linguistic gap also influenced social attitudes, preventing a unified approach to disability and reinforcing stigma. This theological framework resulted in disabled individuals being viewed as morally deficient or spiritually punished, which justified neglect and sometimes harsh treatment. The emphasis on confession and the physician of souls over physical healing reveals a prioritization of spiritual health that often overshadowed medical care, reflecting the limited medical knowledge and the stronghold of religious doctrine. And hospices, often by royals, nobles, or religious figures, marks a significant development in the care of disabled and sick people. These institutions were among the first organized attempts to provide 24-hour care, specialized accommodations, and shelter for those unable to survive independently. The fact that some hospitals focused on specific groups, like blind priests or lepers, indicates a growing awareness of different needs within the impaired population and an early form of medical specialization. Disabled beggars often received more alms and attention than the able-bodied poor, indicating that visible impairment could be leveraged as a means of survival in a harsh economic environment. Understanding these historical attitudes deepens our appreciation of how far societal views on disability have evolved, and underscores the enduring importance of compassion and inclusion. This insight complicates the narrative of universal suffering by showing that disability intersected with social and economic systems in nuanced ways, sometimes offering unexpected benefits within marginalization. The differentiation into sensory, physical, and mental impairments shows an early form of categorization, but lacked the nuanced understanding of disability as a social and medical condition, emphasizing care as a Christian duty rather than mere almsgiving for personal salvation. This paradoxical view led to both compassion and violent persecution, especially during crises like the Black Death, when fear and scapegoating culminated in tragic massacres. The widespread establishment of leper hospitals outside cities, while facilitating some social interaction and economic activity, also enforce physical and social isolation. Their role in medieval society underscores the tension between care and exclusion in dealing with contagious disease and disability. His example inspired monastic orders to provide ongoing nursing care, shelter, and support for the disabled, moving beyond transient charity to more sustained assistance. The spiritual and practical embrace of the disabled helped lay early foundations for more humane treatment. Within the limits of the time, such events were not isolated, but part of broader societal norms that tolerated or even encouraged mockery of the disabled. This reflects a lack of empathy and the normalization of cruelty, highlighting how disabled people were marginalized and publicly degraded, contrasting sharply with modern values of dignity and rights. Highlights medieval society lacked a single term for disabled, instead categorizing impairments narrowly. Disability was often seen as a punishment for sin, linking physical impairment to spiritual failing. Religious institutions and wealthy patrons founded early hospitals that cared for various disabilities. Disabled people, especially the blind, were sometimes publicly humiliated for entertainment. St. Francis of Assisi's compassion marked a shift toward more humane treatment of the disabled. Lepers faced both compassion and persecution, notably during the Black Death. Disabled beggars could sometimes gain social advantages through Christian charity. Key insights: medieval language and perception of disability. The absence of a universal term like disabled highlights how medieval society fragmented and compartmentalized impairments, reflecting a worldview that focused on visible, physical differences rather than holistic human conditions. Spiritual interpretation of disability. The Church's teaching that bodily ailments were caused by sin profoundly shaped medieval responses to disability. Social cruelty and public humiliation. The documented spectacles involving blind men being forced to fight a pig illustrate a disturbing form of social entertainment that dehumanized disabled individuals. Emergence of specialized care institutions, the founding of hospitals. Influence of St. Francis of Assisi and Christian charity. St. Francis's compassionate approach to the sick and poor represented a pivotal shift in medieval attitudes. Lepers' ambiguous social position. Lepers occupied a complex space, often segregated but sometimes regarded as spiritually closer to God due to their suffering. Disability as a social survival strategy. The account of the blind man who preferred his blindness to regain social advantages in begging reveals how disability could confer certain social capital within a charitable society. In conclusion, the video provides a comprehensive overview of the multifaceted experiences of disabled people in medieval society, revealing a world where spiritual beliefs, social norms, and emerging institutional care shaped their lives in complex and often contradictory ways.